Hello and welcome to Improving Scottish Football. My name is Kieran and this is another special mini episode where we're diving into the archives and revisiting some brilliant conversations. Now, before we go any further, please do hit that subscribe button or the follow button, and if you can, please leave us a 5-star review as well. You don't even need to write anything down, just hit those 5 stars. That would be hugely appreciated. Now, this episode is with Michael Bochel, who's an expert in football marketing and also sits on the board at Nairn County in the Highland League. In this episode, we discuss the results of a poll that was done at the time about changes that fans want to see within Scottish football. Now, it's very interesting for me listening back to this episode, and you can see how much has changed or not. So in this episode, we discuss league reconstruction, a big hot topic, of course, recently. And although those discussions didn't go anywhere this year, they'll come around again. And hopefully next time they're discussed, the clubs might be more ready to embrace some change. It might be a year or two down the line, it might be further, but we need to keep that conversation going. We're also discussing about the bottleneck for Lowland League clubs and Highland League clubs trying to get into the SPFL, but we're going to start with another hot topic, and that is the issue of selling alcohol within Scottish football stadiums.
You know, the underlying message of it all really was any sort of major decision in Scotland, the fans should be consulted.
Absolutely. And it's another big reason why I started this podcast, is to actually have some sort of home for conversation where we can talk about the changes that we want to see. So I tell you what, let's work our way down this poll, if we can, and just talk about some of these big issues and tell us where the kind of the fan opinion currently lies.
Yeah, certainly. So the first question on it was, should fans be allowed to buy alcohol again in Scotland of football? And I think obviously that comes from the fact that pretty much any other sport in Scotland, you can have a drink while watching it. And in Scotland, you've not been able to have a beer or a alcoholic drink at a game of football since 1980, which at the time of recording is 43 years ago. So I think it highlights a little bit of the second-class nature that Scottish football fans get treated as. You can easily go to the rugby, get a bottle of beer in your seat, but for example, I can't get a drink. I couldn't go and buy a beer to watch Nairn County versus Hindley in the Highland League.
Yeah. This is a huge issue, I think, for a lot of fans. It keeps getting swept under the carpet, but the reality is this ban was made in 1980. The ban is older than you and I, right? You're not older.
No, it's definitely older than you.
Things have changed. And the fact that in England, a nation that is associated with hooliganism more than any other country, the fact that you can buy alcohol in stadiums in England and you can't in Scotland is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think, you touched on a couple of things there. I think, society and culture has changed in Scotland. I think there's still Scotland's got, and I think the argument that's made by the anti-drinking campaigners is that, Scotland's relationship as a whole with alcohol. But, as we're saying, society and culture's changing. I think, to be fair, Neil Doncaster was on the Price of Football podcast, and he did say that it's something that they've been looking to have conversations about. But again, I've not seen too much of official fan consultation. There's been little bits here and there. I think there was, I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong when I say this, but it was somebody like Stirling University or somebody was doing some sort of research into it. But, we in our poll, the unscientific poll, we asked, they had 4 options. It was yes, it should be allowed at all levels of the game. It should only be allowed at the likes of League One and the women's game and below. Or it should only be in women's football, or continue the ban as a whole. And the results was 75.6% said you should be able to get a drink at all levels of the game in Scotland. 11.4% was League One and below. 0.6 was just women's football only, and there's still 12%, that said that they want to continue the ban. And I think that's, again, we don't know the demographic breakdown of this poll and stuff like that, and that's where I think it's what that of all the topics that we're going to discuss about, it's the one that I would like to see more research done into it, more feasibility studies, whatever it needs to be, because the further you get down the pyramid, the difference it can make would be massive. Again, I can speak from it from a Nairn County point of view, but the attractiveness for people just to have a bit of a day out and come with their mates and have a couple of beers during the day and then go home after the football is quite attractive. Anecdotally, we've heard from a lot of our fans that and people that don't come regularly to Station Park that would be more attractive for them to come to the game. The revenue that we would get from it would obviously be significant, or hopefully would be significant. And I'm not just talking about beer sales, but also talking about the chance you could sell pouring rights for the whole league or leagues, and then get a share of that revenue. So, there's a lot of plus points to it. Again, there'll be people with counter arguments to it, but I think, as I say, we're at that point in time where I think something seriously needs a serious grown-up conversation needs to be had about it, because I've heard or read interviews from people from Police Scotland and other parties come out and it's point blank shooting it down before it gets beyond anything, and this just painting a picture of football fans in Scotland, which I think is unfair. And yeah, you go any team and there'll be some, unruly individuals, but not all the time, and is it any different to rugby fans or those that are going to a concert in Hampden or Murrayfield? So yeah, I think, as I say, grown-up conversations that people can take off their sort of tunnel vision and look at the bigger picture.
I actually brought a couple of English friends up to a game last year, and they were like, okay, great, do you want a pint? And I was like, you can't buy alcohol in Scottish grounds. They were like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, sorry, it's been banned since 1980. They were like, why? What? Like, they just cannot understand, because yeah,
in England it was only banned for 5 years.
Yeah, they can do everything in England. Honestly, you can't tell me that we're worse than the English. And the whole kind of Scotland's got a bad relationship with alcohol. I could argue that possibly part of it is fueled by this alcohol ban, because what you end up getting is people binge drinking the hell out of a Saturday late morning lunchtime, because they know they can't drink sensibly in the stadium. So you'll find people smuggling stuff in, and I think it's just so much nicer just to have it in a more official and licensed and controlled way.
The one thing I've heard before loads of times when it comes to that is that, if you can't go 90 minutes without a drink, that highlights the problem. But for a lot of people, it's not about wanting to go out and get pissed before it or, after it. It's about just going to something that you love watching with your mates and having a sociable couple of beers or drinks and stuff like that. And that's taken away from people as well, as that, but as you say, you could talk about this all night, and some people are never going to change their opinions either, which is an unfortunate thing. But hopefully, some progress is made. I want to say in the coming by the end of the season, but that's probably setting an unrealistic target. But you'd like to see some progress at some point.
Yep. All right. Best we move on.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll get stuck here all evening. Okay. So. Hot button issue number 2, please, Michael.
Is the ideal structure of the Scottish Premiership. So with this vote, we had keep it 12 teams, 14 teams, 16 teams, or 18 teams. The most popular, with 48% of the vote, was 16 teams, followed by 18 teams at 21%, 14 teams at 15%, and 12 teams also at 15%.
Okay. And obviously that people can't give their reasoning or anything, but what's your kind of reading of that situation?
I think a common complaint within Scottish football amongst the SPFL of all divisions within the SPFL is that the fact that you end up playing the same teams four times, at least four times a season. That's not including cup games. So you're the monotony of playing the same teams, and looking for something a bit of variety. But the problem is, there's probably two things to it. One, there's the broadcast television contracts which require Celtic v Rangers, Rangers v Celtic to happen four times a season, and then you've got, do we have enough depth to make a top division? I would argue, and this is personal opinion only, that 18 teams is too much of a stretch for a top division of a country of our size to have the disparity between what would be the top two and the bottom two or three would be absolutely huge. But I think there is merits in exploring 14 or 16 teams, but again, requires on clubs to vote for through on this, and an appetite to happen beyond the fans. And at the moment in time, I don't believe it's there.
Mm. Yeah, definitely needs to be talked about. My personal view is, 14, maybe 16. I do get the monotony.
Not that easy to say, is
Monotony. I can understand why players and managers stay. The high profile players and managers stay within Scottish football for a couple of years and then move on, because it's there's only so many times that you can keep on doing it. And I just think a little bit of variation isn't just great for players and managers, it is good for fans, just to be able to go to some more grounds, to have that extra little bit of excitement. But yeah, as you say, it's a balancing act of not diluting the quality too much.
Yeah.
The other big thing for me is, by expanding the league, in theory, your third, fourth, fifth place teams should be picking up more points more regularly against the lower sides, because they're maybe having to play Celtic and Rangers less. Therefore, the gap to the top two might close. Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to number 3 then, please.
Yeah, so playoff finals, should they be two-legged finals as they are, or one match at a neutral venue? So a little bit, very similar to what happens down south in England. And the vote for that was 79% wanted it to move to a one-match neutral venue, and 21% wanted to keep it as is.
Yeah, I'm all for this. The playoff works brilliantly in England. The teams going to Wembley, it's such a massive event, such a big TV spectacle. And it's an opportunity for these clubs to go to a huge venue that they wouldn't otherwise, go to. Can you imagine, if the Partick Thistle versus Ross County was at Hampden, or at least, at some, decent sized neutral venue? I think that would have made more of a special event, and provides the fans an amazing opportunity to go to either the National Stadium or somewhere significant that they really do not get to go to very often.
I think there's two ways of looking at that. I think I think recency bias would have people say, "Oh no, keep it two legs," especially after what had happened, because the drama that came at the end of that Ross County Partick Thistle game was brilliant. As a neutral, and chances for both teams to win it before it goes to a penalty shootout. But I think when you look at it as a whole and wider, personally, I think a one game final would be brilliant. I don't necessarily agree it should be at Hampden, only because I would rather see it in a stadium where it looks full. Rather, and that's no disrespect to Ross County and Partick Thistle, but I can't see them bringing 50,000 fans between them to a game like that. However, if they could fill out a McDermott Park or a Pittodrie or a Tannadice or whatever it would be for a game of that like that between those two sides, for example, then I think that would be a great day. And that we see every year down south just how much drama there can be with these games. So I would like to, personally would like to see that.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, next issue, please.
Yeah, so semi-related to relegation and fluidity of the pyramid is League Two relegation. Should it be one automatically down, two automatically down, one down and one in a playoff, or keep as is, which is currently bottom team of League Two plays a playoff against a two-legged playoff against the winner of the Highland League versus Lowland League playoff final.
Okay.
And overwhelmingly 54% wanted one down and one in a playoff. 21% wanted two automatically down, 17% wanted one automatically down, and 8% wanted to keep as is.
Okay. So you've obviously got experience working with a Highland League club. From your perspective, what would that, if we went with a more popular option there, how would that change things for you guys?
I think, as for anybody within the pyramid system that's below League Two, I think it would be very encouraging. There's a lot of ambitious sides, particularly within the Lowland League and below. There's ambitious sides in the Highland League. We're one of them. But I think it would keep things fresh and let the ambitious clubs rise to the level that they, I think, deserve or feel that they should be at. And then, because I think that there's clubs within the SPFL that, we're starting to see it. Berwick Rangers, Cowdenbeath. There's two examples of teams that have gone down that have, in East Stirlingshire as well, that have struggled to really do it. To a bit unfair probably on Cowdenbeath. They've only really been down a season, but they had a very tough first season in the Lowland League, and you see other teams that like Kelty Hearts and Cove who money behind them, but I think it would allow teams to find the right level that they should be at. I think it would just, as I said, keep things fresh, and give something for clubs at non-league level to work towards as well, and feel like there's a fair crack of the whip to get up.